It's time to glaze Apothecary Diaries. Mao Mao is not your average protagonist, and I absolutely agree. Mao Mao is a breath of fresh air, bro. I love how she is so independent, so stoic, so Sigma. I think that Mao Mao is a Sigma female. Straight up, as cringe as that sounds, neat by nature, please give me the breakdown why Mao Mao is so peak.
The Apothecary Diaries is great, which is in no small part thanks to its protagonist, Mao Mao.
Yep.
Mao Mao basically immediately makes a strong impression with her wealth of medical knowledge, generally aloof demeanor, and habit of microdosing on poison.
She literally got kidnapped and got sold off to the rear palace, and her entire attitude there was like, womp womp. It is what it is. I guess that happened to me.
And habit of microdosing on poison. She's not like the other girls. She's different. But
Yep.
really, while these personality traits may be a unique combination, they're still surface level, and it quickly becomes clear that there's more to Mao Mao than just some eccentric hobbies.
And the thing about the qualities of Mao that I enjoy about her, the whole stoic nature, the independence, the fact that she doesn't really give a fuck about other people insulting her. Like how Li Hua's like Onnas were trying to be mean to her and always kicking her out. She doesn't care. She doesn't take anything personal because she does not, respect the opinions of those, Onnas. But as soon as like the life was on the line, like Li Hua's life, she got so fucking serious and slapped the bitch. Like this whole entire demeanor and characterization of Mao Mao, I think is so fascinating. But then I realized that this is honestly like the result of a girl who was kind of a mistake. You know what I mean? I'm not sure if mistake is the right word to put it, but what happened with Mao Mao's mom and Lakan. Mao Mao, and then Mao Mao being birthed and the mom literally trying to kill Mao Mao, I think. I'm not completely sure. I haven't finished Apothecary Diaries just yet. We're one episode away. But there is that one scene where Mao Mao has a nightmare of her mom basically trying to like choke Mao Mao as a child. Who knows if it actually happened or not? Maybe it's another case of misdirection, but I thought that maybe all these different qualities are basically her being like a survivor. Like all these different traumatic incidents and stuff has now been handled through coping mechanisms, and that's what resulted in this girl that we see.
Each episode, both she and the world of the Apothecary Diaries just get more and more absorbing. And so I started to ask myself, why?
Why is this world so absorbing? I think that it's just the element of mystery is definitely one of the most engaging part about this show. Constantly guessing the identities of different people and constantly guessing exactly what happened in these murder mysteries, right? Mao Mao basically goes around as, she's supposed to be just an apothecary. She's supposed to be just like, Jin Shi's like, like secretary and working, but she does more than that. She does like detective work. She does like mental therapy for some people, literally fixes people's like entire lives and families and shit like that. She honestly, she's a fucking sex educational too. As she goes around, teaching the concubines how to make the Emperor cum the best. She does a lot. You would think that a show like this, which is heavily based on the dialogue and yapping and meetings, would be considered boring. But it's not that at all. Like, you don't need action to make this show exciting. The way that this studio, and what studio is actually doing Apothecary Diaries actually? Apothecary Diaries Studio. Toho Animation Studio. OLM? OLM and Toho? Okay. They're pretty fucking legit, man. Toho and OLM, they know the assignment. They know the story of Apothecary Diaries and how to really give it life to the screen. Because some shows, I just feel like, really land flat. Like these meetings and stuff, if the studios and the people, the talent working on, this project didn't really understand what Apothecary Diaries is all about in the manga, they could never make these dialogue heavy episodes be so exciting. But I'm at the edge of my seat every fucking time when seemingly nothing's really happening and people are just yapping, but it's so fucking engaging. Truly how, just because it's yapping and dialogue and meetings doesn't mean it's boring. It's the way that it's adapted. It's the way that it's directed. If you look at Ten Story Season 3 and the amount of people fucking mauling at any time the table shows up, it's because they don't really do it justice. They're not trying to make these dialogues engaging in a very dynamic way that Apothecary Diaries is able to do.
Why is Mao Mao so interesting? The Apothecary Diaries, or Kusuriya no Hitorigoto, is a mystery series set in a fictional country based on Imperial China.
Yep.
Originally a web novel written by Hyuga Natsu, it eventually began being published as a light novel, and since has been adapted into both a manga and now in...
Bro, the light novel sales are fucking crazy. This shit was like up there with the likes of Blue Lock, Frieden and shit.
Anime. It follows Mao Mao, an apothecary by trade who at the very start of the series is kidnapped and sold into servitude. She ends up working in the rear palace, or inner court if you're reading the manga, essentially a giant estate that houses the emperor's many, many concubines.
The Emperor's Palace of the MILFs. The dude literally has an entire fucking district where everyone is either a eunuch, meaning no balls, just shafts, so that they can't, you know, I guess, have lust for the women, so that they're all loyal. And then you have the waifus, all the fucking concubines. Crazy harem, man.
Existing for the purpose of creating as many heirs as possible. After warning one of the emperor's highest ranked consorts about the cause of her baby's deteriorating health, Mao Mao is promoted to being one of her personal maids. From here, she's drawn increasingly deeper into the secrets of the court, investigating case after case, whether under orders or out of her own curiosity. Mao Mao stands out initially because of her personality traits. She's unusual, both when compared to other characters in this.
In the beginning, it was because of her education, right? The fact that every servant girl is illiterate, but Mama was the one to be able to figure out what's happening with the poisoning of the concubines and the babies. And what was it? It was the makeup powder. And by her giving these hints, but she also kind of got caught because Jinshi was pretty perceptive. Immediately, Jinshi wrote something on the paper and Mama reacted and it was like, boom, gotcha, right? So it's the whole educated part that makes Mama stand out. And then after that,
the series and to other female protagonists. While it may not be 100% unique, her particular blend of logical reasoning, bizarre idiosyncrasies, and empathy is something I feel like I haven't seen all that often. While the more rational side of her wants to go under the radar and avoid trouble, she also cares about the well-being of others and uses her knowledge to help them throughout the series.
That's right. She will do whatever it takes to save people. Like, even the episode where Mama saved Jinshi without even knowing that it was Jinshi, that was a random dude to her, but she still did there and risked her life. To her, life seems to be very sacred. We saw that since the beginning of, you know, that Liha arc where she's still sick because her fucking stupid-ass servant girls are still applying the goddamn makeup. It's almost like Kamisho Toma. You know what I mean? Every life is equal? She will no matter what save them? I don't know.
And all of this is only made better by the anime. I've been a fan of the Apothecary Diaries manga for years, so it was no surprise to me that the show was good. What was a surprise was how effectively Yuki Aoi's vocal performance for Mao Mao distills the essence of the character.
This is the mad girl voice actor, right? The woman that's voice acting Tanya, Saga of Evil, I think? And Capella in ReZero right now, right? The maniacal laugh. We kind of had a bit of that when she started cackling like a witch during the whole Suire plot twist.
I'm not huge into voice actors, and I usually can only remember that she voiced Hibiki from Symphogear and Madoka.
I have a terrible time memorizing voice actors too, man. And like animated directors. I can memorize like soundtrack composers for some reason, but I just know voice actors based off of their characters. Like Dio's voice actor every time, which is kind of rude. You know, I probably should know his name rather than saying Dio's voice actor, but I think most of you also would recognize him for voice actor of Dio rather than his actual name.
From Madoka.
Oh, Madoka mentioned. Don't worry. One of these days, maybe Madoka can make it back to the poll and we can actually watch it.
I may have been less surprised if I hadn't forgotten she also voiced Lucy from...
Jesus Christ. That ass.
She also voiced...
Googly moogly.
To Lucy from Cyberpunk Edge Runners, but I was impressed by how different her interpretation of Mao Mao is from those other roles. Whether she's pondering the implications of her actions or giggling while imagining poisoning herself, it all feels right. But while all this is great, no discussion of Mao Mao is complete without talking about the setting of the Apothecary Diaries. Setting is important to any story, of course, but I think in this case, it and Mao Mao's relationship with it are an essential aspect to understanding the appeal of the series.
Yeah, like the mysteries of like how, you know, what's it called? You have people like our adoptive father, right? Revealing that, what are the odds, you know? It was like, you know, there's like, that was like the beginning of when we realized that Mao Mao is connected to the rear palace one way or the other. Then suddenly we get more identities being revealed and her connections to Lacan and her mom back at the Vertigo Palace and her adoptive dad and so much more. And Jinshi also being the baby that our literal adoptive dad, who is pretty much now confirmed to be the great uncle, delivered.
The Apothecary Diaries is far from the only manga or anime set in a fictional version of historical East Asian countries. There's also series like Yona of the Dawn or The Eccentric Doctor of the Moonflower Kingdom. More on that second one later. But when I
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say, hey, this is Apothecary Diaries, man. But no, it's just, you know, she's just grinding up herbs and medica and shit. It's not Apothecary Diaries.
Our Kingdom. More on that second one later. But when I first read the Apothecary Diaries, I was captivated by just how rich its world is. Part of this may have been that it was the first time I had been exposed to this kind of setting.
Me too. This setting is so different from any anime that I've seen because I don't really, you know, like these kind of like Chinese settings, like these rear palace, you know, like the emperor stuff. This is a setting that's pretty rare in anime. I'm sure there's plenty of stories based in these kind of settings, but for the animes that I've seen, this was very refreshing, very different. And even like the beginning, I just genuinely, it was so hard to try to guess the different mysteries and, you know, what's happening because of the storytelling differences set in this like fictional Chinese place, right? The whole theme of people longing for love and freedom, but they're kind of stuck at either the Verdigris Palace or, you know, the rear palace set by the emperor, right? And then my mind broke when I realized that the woman, you know, in the beginning who tripped in front of the emperor and the emperor said, ew, gross. I thought, like, what's she doing right now? Why is she getting outcasted? Actually, that was the entire plan because everyone wants genuine love and she's getting out to, you know, get away with her old childhood friend who's like a military general and shit. And it's like, oh, at that point, I was like trying to really change my mindset of how I should be thinking, you know, in perspective of like people's motivation and incentives based on this setting.
Even though it's not actually that uncommon, particularly in webcomics and
Yeah, but these stuff I just don't consume.
Chinese dramas. But I don't think that newness entirely explains its allure. The Apothecary Diaries creates a natural feeling world by combining real medical truth and Chinese history with fictional elements. The country where it's set is ruled by a hereditary line of emperors who each have a harem of concubines gathered from far and wide, just like China. This particular incarnation of that system, with 4 high-ranked consorts outside of the empress, seems most similar to the Tang dynasty, according to Wikipedia.
Okay.
The use of lead whitening powder for cosmetic purposes, which also appears in the series, dates as far back as the 8th century BC. But not every element that appears here is factual. For example, aphrodisiacs? Not real. And using silver tableware to identify poisoned meals is dubious. This apparently was used by rulers as a countermeasure against arsenic, which was thought to cause silver chopsticks to tarnish. However, silver doesn't actually react to the presence of arsenic, but instead to the presence of sulfur, and while it is
oh my god, my immersion of Apothecary Diaries is ruined. This is not realistic for me anymore.
possible for arsenic to exist in a sulfide compound, it still would probably take too long for a reaction to occur. Anyway, the point is, using a loosely historical setting allows for Hyuga to craft a complex stage, not bound by the constraints of real history. She can manufacture political climates, create nations, and make up poisons.
female author, Giga Chad.
as she pleases to serve the story and build a well-realized world. This is, again, enhanced even further in the anime adaptation, which improves on the visuals all around, but especially helps define a stronger sense of place through the architecture and environments in the backgrounds, which appear to be at least partially CGI, but I think look pretty great actually.
Didn't even know it was CGI. It all blended in so well. I have no qualms about the production value of Apothecary Diaries. I think that everything looks fucking stunning. I think the soundtracks are just so on fucking point. I love this anime.
So, how does all of this relate back to Mao Mao? Well, of course, like any character, she's in part shaped by her environment. But in Mao Mao's case, her viewpoint of this environment is fundamentally important to how it is portrayed to us. At its core, the most focal themes of the Apothecary Diaries are class and status, and while we see these ideas applied to all the characters in the show, it especially focuses on the woman in this society. Mao Mao is poor and a commoner, and so she has very little control over her own life.
And she is very aware of her status too, constantly making remarks that like, I am not a noble at all, you know, I must know my place and it's not in my place to speak on behalf of other shit like that too.
This amount of knowledge is the only real advantage she has because it makes her useful to the more powerful people around her. Poison was not only an extremely common method of assassination in China, but was also a large part of traditional Chinese medicine. So, being an apothecary, this makes Mao Mao's obsession with it understandable, and leaves her especially qualified to explain the many incidents that occur in the Rear Palace.
Yep.
These cases are not simple whodunits. Everyone
Yeah, it's very complicated. Dude, the amount of misdirections that this author sets out for us, she bamboozles us over and over again. Kind of like ReZero2, there's these authors that's just like, oh, you think you're following the plot point? Yeah? Really? Well, guess what? Everything I fed you was a fucking lie, or slightly, or even not slightly, significantly exaggerated to make you think a specific way. Now I'm gonna hit you in the back of the head as you realize that Lacan is not a bad person. Lacan is a fucking victim of this whole situation. But again, the way that they first introduced this shit, it's just like, what? God fucking damn it, now I feel bad.
Mao Mao is involved in exists to reveal another layer behind the struggles of the characters.
The Emperor as well. I thought the Emperor was a fucking asshole. I thought that he was like really like a piece of shit. But it turns out he is actually a really righteous and a good person who seems to be pretty chill. Like the whole thing of like him figuring out how the roses are colored, you know, the blue rose, you know, stuff about adding like a dye at the root of the fucking roses. And he was like very interested in that and stuff like that. I'd be willing to think that maybe he also turned a blind eye when the girl tripped in front of him. And maybe he figured out that, you know, the girl actually wanted to get out with this for her childhood friend. And he was like, you know what? Go ahead. Go ahead.
The series barely even bothers to bury the lead about who the culprit of a crime is at all. What's more important is how and why they did it.
It's crazy how there's so many different crimes and side quests happening, and you think that these are just not slice of life, episodic villain of the week nature where we handle one case and we move forward. No. All of this shit somehow connects together in the craziest way. And it's just like, holy shit, I can't believe they did that.
How allows for fun scenes of Mao Mao uncovering the secrets below the surface of these mysteries, while also deepening our understanding of the knowledge that exists in this world. And why helps us see into these characters' thoughts and feelings, giving us more insight into Mao Mao herself through her reactions to these reasons. This series loves to live in gray areas. There are good things to be found in bad situations, and there are understandable motivations behind every heinous crime. Mao Mao is essential to how these events are portrayed, since she serves as the point of view through which we see nearly all of it.
And she always says, but it's just conjecture. Because her dad always told her, sorry, great uncle told us, hey, you should never speak on behalf of conjecture, but everything Mao Mao fucking talks is pretty much spot on.
She's constantly observing her environment and those around her, processing various sides of their situation. She may have been kidnapped and sold unlawfully to work in the Rear Palace, but many others who work there were sold by their own families. While the selling
That's fucked up. Selling your own kids, because I guess they're so poor that they just have to sell the kids off.
of human beings may be fundamentally unethical. In this context, many maids actually have a better life in the palace, where they're fed, clothed, and paid than they did in the villages they came from.
True.
And while it makes sense to blame the emperor for the injustices that happen in the society
it's not really his fault, man. It really isn't. I mean, if you really wanted to change this whole system, I guess the person at the top could just like revamp and overhaul the system, but I don't know if the emperor could honestly do that. He's actually a pretty decent guy.
He rules, he's portrayed in a fairly neutral light. In
Yeah.
fact, things are better since he came into control.
Yeah, because his dad, the previous emperor, that dude was a fucking degenerate. Li Shu was 9 years old and a concubine at that point, and he was fucking around with that. This emperor says, no, I will not touch that.
The country is doing well. He even outlawed slavery. But he also has many concubines who he can treat coldly and are at the mercy of his whims.
Was he treating her coldly here, though? This is the girl that tripped. My headcanon is that the emperor saw through it and he intentionally turned a blind eye and, you know, acted like he didn't want her. Not because she tripped, but because this is like a way for her to get free and find her true love.
Yes, they have status and live in luxury, but while some of them are happy to bear the emperor's children, others would rather escape the role that has been pushed onto them.
I think that Gyokyo might also want something like that. She made a comment about like, you know, everyone wants to, you know, wants true love when she was the departing. Like this girl, you know, when this girl was departing, if Gyokyo asked Mama like a question about, you know, you think, you know, everyone wants like true love like that? I don't know if Gyokyo wants to bail out of the palace or not.
The role that has been pushed onto them. Mama is forced to confront all of this, and she does it in her typical level-headed fashion. She's very much a realist. She knows she doesn't...
She's very pragmatic. She's very practical. She deals in practicality and realism. Everything is cold, hard logic and calculations.
Really have the ability to improve society. She's just trying to make it through unscathed. And in the process, she has to make decisions about how to handle any investigation she's been tasked. Sometimes this means doing something reckless and stepping outside her normal demeanor in order to protect someone else's well-being. Sometimes this means deciding whether to actually reveal the truth when she knows someone else will get punished.
That's right, and we turn a blind eye sometimes.
Likely without the circumstances behind their actions being taken into account. It's this way that Mao Mao engages with everything around her that gives her, and by extension, the entire series a sense of depth. I think a good way to add some more insight into what makes this series work, though, is actually by examining a similar one. The formerly mentioned eccentric doctor of the Moonflower Kingdom is a story set in a fictional country based on Imperial China starring a teenage doctor named Koyo. Koyo is a medical genius, and after saving one of his servants from a lethal wound, the prince of the country takes an interest in her, bringing her to the capital to use her abilities for his own gain. There are a lot of parallels between the Apothecary Diaries and this series. The setting, the focus on medical elements, and on paper, many aspects of the protagonists.
Hey, it's Jinshi! Jinshi? Mao Mao!
To the point that Koyo even has an unusual obsession that she can't resist getting excited about. Though, rather than poison and herbs, it's muscles.
Okay.
Koyo and Mao
She's just down bad for super jacked muscular men. She's like Lee Haku then.
Mao are actually very different in important ways, though. Koyo is made out to be more capable than Mao Mao, somehow. She has a photographic memory and performs surgeries successfully on the first try.
OP.
But unlike Mao Mao, who is logical but also cares about others, Koyo is characterized as an airhead whose fatal flaw is her lack of empathy.
The fucking sociopath? Lack of empathy. Airhead, this is dangerous.
She just wants to perform medical procedures and doesn't seem to have much regard for the actual patient.
Oh.
Combined, these traits keep
That's
her from being
dangerous.
engaged with the events happening around her in any sort of meaningful way, and she just comes off as boring. The prince himself, Kei-yoon, is actually the one usually moving the plot forward, and it moves forward quickly. He decides Koyo is the key to the future of the country immediately, after seeing her perform a single surgery. From his perspective, her extensive knowledge is something that can counteract his enemies, a religious order gaining power through mysticism and misinformation.
Oh, I like cults and shit like that. I probably enjoy this part of the story.
Unfortunately, this series simply leaves me with limited interest in the characters or world. It tries to set up a sense of conspiracy and intrigue, but isn't all that cleverly written and fails to really pull me in. What's more important, though, is that despite sharing a lot with the Apothecary Diaries, the setting of the eccentric doctor of the Moonflower Kingdom feels incredibly flat in comparison. Both Koyo and Mao Mao may essentially be passengers carried around by the story, but Koyo is basically entirely oblivious to any meaningful things happening around her, so Kei-eun and the rest of the characters are all that really help us understand what's happening in this world.
But Mao Mao basically does that for us, so it's way better.
But their perspectives are just too one-dimensional and vague, leaving everything feeling disjointed and lacking nuance. Unlike Koyo, Mao Mao actually meaningfully engages with the setting of the Apothecary Diaries, and it's her perspective that pulls together the series and makes it work. Mao Mao treads carefully, avoiding attention and considering her position as a commoner in all situations, but she is willing to step out of that comfort zone if there is a reason to. Often when someone's life or well-being is at stake.
Always.
Because she contemplates the feelings and motivations of others, even if she doesn't fully understand them, we get to see different sides of the many walks of life that surround her. We understand how women are taught to value marriage and devote themselves to their husbands, but also how they don't always have a choice in who they marry. We understand how little the lives of maids are valued in comparison to consorts, nobles, or anyone else with status. We understand that some courtesans may be coveted and highly regarded, but that others have to sell their bodies constantly just to get by. We understand how
Doesn't Python just do it for fun though? She just loves milking men and therefore she puts out.
Consorts may live a life of luxury, but are also political tools married off for others to benefit, and are subjects to the whims of the emperor. And we get to see how these things affect the characters, externally and internally, sometimes driving them to do awful things. This world is complex.
It is.
There are different sides to every situation.
It's very complex because we're led to believe in a way that's very misdirected, like thinking that Lakan actually knocked up Feng Xiao, Mao Mao's mom. Thinking that like he did something really bad and that maybe, you know, Lakan is like a terrible person who is manipulating everybody, but turns out he's also just like a victim of this whole fucking situation and he just got caught up in everything, and now we might have the most fucking wholesome conclusion to Apothecary Diaries if mom and, you know, dad like meet back up and everything is fine. Like time after time, so many things keep, you know, happening in a way that makes us stay in a box. We're tunnel visioning without ever thinking that it could be a completely different way.
And the push and pull of characters playing into and fighting against the state of this society makes it fascinating. Mao Mao is trying to navigate a system that is unfair, sometimes even cruel, and it's the strong synergy between Mao Mao and her environment that makes her stand out as such an excellent character. Her future is always in flux, with others trying to push her in different directions. But while it isn't clear where Mao Mao will end up, her journey there will only give more insight into the intricacies of the world of the Apothecary Diaries, and I am definitely here for it.
Now that is a lot of beautifully well put string of words to describe in detail why Apothecary Diaries is so peak and why Mao Mao is such a good character, but in simpler terms for a monkey like me, why do I love Apothecary Diaries so much? From the beginning, the way that they did their storytelling of the different mysteries was very captivating. Mao Mao being, you know, the person who is investigating with her knowledge of apothecary stuff and trying to come up with different theories of what's happening, and then plot twists happen, and it just like the things that you didn't even expect is happening, and it just blows your fucking mind. The identity mysteries. Who's my dad? Who's my mom? Who is this like old ass man that's apparently our dad? Is he really our dad? When was Mao Mao born? When's Jinshi born? Holy shit. You talking to me that dad was actually at the palace, you know, delivering babies and shit like that, but babies got swapped? Why does the emperor's little bro is really sick and Jinshi's not there when the emperor's little bro is there, right? Stuff like that. Who is Aduo? What the hell is happening with Li Shu and her servant? Like, there's so many misdirections that keep happening that makes you think that like, this must be it. This must be it. And then I'm just like shocked that, oh my God, it wasn't that. Right, so that kind of like mystery, identity, storytelling, the misdirections keeps me so fucking on toe and keep getting engaged. Another thing is the production. The soundtracks are so fucking good. The soundtrack really just like heightens up this anime to the next level with its peak dialogues, and it just blows my mind how, again, an anime that is all just based on dialogues, talking, trying to figure shit out, it's way more enjoyable to watch than just random unga bunga, you know, battle shonen stuff happening. Because sometimes it is fun to turn your brain off and just watch hype shit happen. And sometimes it's really fun to lock in and think about what's happening, what could happen, and keep track of these different little plot points. Because again, just because we solve one side quest or, you know, a random mystery, it doesn't mean that that whole thing is done. Like how every different piece of the puzzle came together for that ceremony tool that eventually melted and almost killed Jinshi, that fucking blew my mind. And then the Suire stuff, you know that the mystery is just gonna continue. You know that the mystery is gonna be even fucking crazier in season 2, but that's pretty much it. Please check out Mr. Neat by Nature's channel. Go like the video if you did. Here's a link. Go check out his other videos, and I will see you next time.